Welcome to the Mystery College Podcast. Today we're with Jason Soll. He is the founder of Guided Shifting, a fantastic course that I've recently enrolled in that teaches you how to shift into a deeper sense of relaxation, calmness, and mindfulness. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Jason.
Yeah, and
Jake.
we also have Alex, who's the former professor of comparative religion at a college, and he's also my co-host now.
Hey guys, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world.
Yeah, so Jason, can you tell us about what started you on your mindfulness journey?
Suffering? Do you want the longer answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's back that a little bit.
The longer answer is welcome because the shorter answer is everybody's go-to.
So I first heard of mindfulness and meditation maybe like 15 plus years ago. And I originally learned of it through the lens of like optimizing your mind, like improving mental performance, that kind of stuff. And then it was many, many years later where I was in a very dark place, probably depressed for around a year or so, where I was so stubborn around actually seeking help, a lifelong pattern in the way I'm wired, that my first round at seeking help was, I'm going to do this myself. I'm just going to meditate. So I downloaded Headspace and started doing some meditations there. That was probably back in like 2018, 2019. And it was, I think, early 2019 when I had my first meditation experience where it really clicked for me, where I felt different. And that was actually through the Peloton app. They have some meditation classes, and there was a 30-minute metta meditation or loving kindness meditation practice. And my system just responded so well to it. I loved it. And I started doing that every day. And on the days where I would do it in the morning, I would feel better. And on the days where I didn't do it, I would feel worse. And so it was supportive, but there was still a bit of a tenuous relationship with the practice. It felt high stakes. And then years later, or now about 3 years ago, I discovered the new science of awakening and learned all about that and set out to see if these lasting changes could actually take place in my system. And like exactly a year ago, basically to the day, they did. And that set me on the path toward making this available to everyone online through just a super duper affordable price and streamlined process. So that's the arc of the journey.
Yeah, fantastic. And I really appreciate the affordability and the tiered options that you have, where each tier has exact same contents, but it's more about where you at financially or in the world. I appreciate that conscientiousness. And I also really
I want to live in a world where everyone benefits from this. Like that's the underlying goal. Like that would just be a better world if everyone could benefit, even like if a ton of people can benefit, even just 10% or 20% of the benefits I've experienced in my lived day-to-day embodied experience from these practices, that's just a better world. I choose that world.
Make that world more like.
Yeah, making it happen. And also really appreciate in the course from having just finished phase 1 that each step of the way there's intake forms and surveys. And it's definitely a new approach to mindfulness courses where things are being quantified, and I get to reflect more deeply on certain metrics. So I'm wondering what brought you to establishing this model of quantifying things, making it very scientific, measurable, manageable.
Well, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I'm not interested in just giving people another cool practice to do every day. I want my ambitious goal, which is the norm for the user base, is I want to bring you through transformative experiences. What I mean by that is you are one way beforehand, you're another way after, and you don't need to do anything to maintain that. You are a changed being. And a lot of these changes that happen as the website takes you through the full awakening kind of continuum, and then other supportive sessions around trauma healing and other growth activities, these transformative sessions have this kind of omnidirectional impact across one's life. Now, this is different from the world that I've worked in for many years now. I work as an executive coach and have been an executive coach for about 5 years. And in that world, and also in a lot of therapeutic modalities, the goal is to start with identifying a specific area of growth or change or healing. And then you do work toward seeing that change. But to my utter surprise, with the experiences that guided shifting takes you through, you spontaneously can see really profound changes across numerous aspects of your life without any conscious effort, even changes and improvements that you didn't even realize were possible until they've changed. And so these supportive integration resources that the website offers you helps you build awareness of all of these different ways that your life is changing. And the more aware you are of all that, the more empowered you'll be to apply conscious effort wherever would suit you best. So I want to, as best as possible, avoid spiritual bypassing. I want people to be very, very, very clear on the truth of what is happening across all aspects of their life. And given that this process allows your mind and body to be okay with more, to be more resilient, to physically to feel okay with more, I trust that people can see more parts of their life more clearly and to be able to handle the truth of that and to feel empowered rather than perhaps weighed down by all of that. So yeah, this is a full body, full stack experience. We just see what changes as you go through these sessions.
Love it. Love it. And I love how you emphasize we're not doing any spiritual bypassing here. We're letting ourselves go into a deeply relaxed space, observing sensations and also in the journaling process, in these surveys, being really, really honest with ourselves about where we're at, where are we struggling with, and also noting the changes that we're seeing in real time and in practice. Yeah, so you had really good query questions in the course. And another thing you were really great at is specifying ways for people who may not be sensitive to some certain sensations or internal interoception and guiding them with a few practices or a few steps so that people can feel their meditation more. So I'm wondering if you could share a few of those.
Yeah, there are lots of ways to play with that question. I mean, one way to summarize the way this technique works is you feel your way into deeper states of safety. It's predominantly like a felt sensation. It doesn't require visualizations or imagining different things or even traditional forms of inquiry or things like that. You feel your way into these different states. And yeah, these language doesn't point in this direction. These are extraordinarily subtle aspects of the embodied experience that this method kind of hooks you into, where even to this day, the language is still imperfect in the sessions. It's not bulletproof, 100% efficacy all the time because different language resonates with different people. So yeah, they're in the sessions themselves, you often find me giving you a legitimate set of options for how something might be showing up. One of the things that you experience in the beginning of sessions is this natural emergence of different felt senses of peace that could be happening. And it could be a felt sense of stillness or a felt sense of openness or emptiness or spaciousness or fullness or heaviness or groundedness or rootedness. And each of these words, some of them point at the same thing, some point at different, because they're a couple different ways that peace seems to arise in the embodied experience when you go through this process. But yes, different language works well for different people. And so it's one of the reasons why I'm continuously tweaking the process, always trying to make it better so it works better for more people. There's one other thing I did want to underscore here is you do have to be able to feel. If you can't feel, rather, if your system is designed to prevent you from feeling because of trauma or other defense patterns that your system has adopted over time, then it's going to take some more time to ease into it. And I hopefully make it easy to feel and to have this level of awareness. But for some people, it's harder, and it's not their fault. It's just the way that their system has been designed to survive over time. Yeah, I could keep riffing on this, but I think that's satisfactory for now.
Fantastic. And speaking of the science and being able to kind of start intercepting, feeling things and giving different models for people to work with, because different folks need different strokes to feel and to get into these deeper states of relaxation and go through these transformations. I wanted to touch on some of the scientific foundations of the work that you're working with, right? Dr. Jeffrey Martins is a big influence, as well as some very somatic based practices from Bezer van der Volk, Peter Levine, and then also I'm curious how the research on flow also plays into what we're doing.
Yeah, just going straight to flow. It seems that I mean, the research around flow is how to enter into these flow states, basically how to get glimpses of flow states. And what seems to spontaneously happen, often by the time you reach like phase 2 or so in the guided shifting journey, is you're living in a persistent flow state. And so it's no longer about experiencing tasks that are well catered to your ability levels, which is there's a whole series of conditions that the research around flow has identified that consistently brings people into flow states. But those qualities of what it's like when you actually enter into flow states, and there's a lot of research that's been done around flow, like what people describe, the augmentation of the sense of time and the sense of self and the quality of decision making and even physical movement across the board, it's exactly the same as what people shift into as a result of just a couple sessions with guided shifting. So it perfectly matches with the research around awakening and the kind of continuum of awakening experiences that people have, just as a lived day-to-day experience. But yeah, like zooming out, because my whole goal with this offering, this suite of offerings, is to help people live better lives. So you feel better, you're more free, and you just like your life even more. The direction that's brought me to is this complete integration of all the different modalities and research that I've discovered over the years, not only through my own personal journey, but as a practitioner who works with clients to facilitate their own growth and healing. So Dr. Jeffrey Martin's research is the foundation in terms of what to expect along the way, in terms of the predictable changes that occur and that I have people kind of look out for so they know they're normal. And then there's a lot of integration around polyvagal theory and trauma. Again, you alluded to Peter Levine and Dr. Bessel van der Kolk around basically how to leverage the fact that guided shifting sessions allow your body to feel so much safer that it's just easier to do deep trauma healing work. In the same way that in psychedelic assisted therapy sessions, if you give someone a full dose of MDMA, they have a couple hours where their body, their entire system feels so much safer. And in that boost of safety, the body will spontaneously start to either heal trauma or allow for the corresponding repressed and resisted emotions to finally feel safe to be expressed through the body. And so instead of getting a temporary dose of safety, you get a persistent dose of safety through this method.
Jake kind of cut off right there, but I had to ask, and I've been meaning to ask. I didn't want to like break your flow, but there is a tendency.
You could try. You can't.
There's this tendency among specializations where we tend to talk in jargon, and I'm asking this for the sake of the layman, because I understand, give or take 82 thereabouts percent of what you're saying, minus all the people that you and Jake mentioned. I understand it in accordance to how it applies within the context of the pan-Indian religious system, because, for example, flow state in Zen Buddhism or in Daishonin Buddhism, that would be similar to Satori. I mean, give or take, or add or subtract a couple of elements. For the sake of the layman, when this gets uploaded, when it's sent out there will be a lot of people who are new to not just your system, but even to the religious jargon that surrounds the concept of meditation, of which there's a lot. That's why most people have this opinion that meditation is a spiritual thing or a mystical thing, because of the jargon. So for the sake of the layman, could you please explain what flow state is, minus the jargon?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. So, I'll give you a couple options for how I approach that question. I could do my best to recall. I mean, flow state is a specific term that within the kind of field of psychology that I could do my best to describe. I also can describe in very simple terms just kind of how it feels to be in the early stages of awakening, or point me wherever you're most curious. Maybe there's a third or fourth direction. What are you most curious about?
For the sake of the everyman, if you will, let's go with number 2.
Yeah. Okay. Great place to start. So the average person spends a lot of time throughout their day lost in thoughts. It could be thoughts about the future, thoughts about the past, could be anxiety about the future, shame about the past, or regret. A lot of those thoughts are often self-referential. like, dang, Jason, like, why did you do that? Like, you shouldn't have done, you could have done better. Like, you should have answered that podcast question differently. That would have been much better. Would have got a better reaction. Or, Jason, we should do this. But what if, let's fantasize about this type of conversation with someone else. Nah, that could be better. Like the rehearsal kind of thing. This is how I spent most of my life. So, you just spend, I think most of us know what it's like to be lost in those kinds of thoughts. Often those kinds of thoughts don't make you feel very good. No. And a lot of people seek out extreme ways often in order to escape those kinds of thoughts. It could be a substance. It could be certain forms of workaholism. It could be extreme sports. I love extreme sports. Or it could be meditation retreats.
I used to.
Extreme sports or other forms of escapism?
All of the above.
All of the above. Yeah, of course.
All of the above.
Yeah. So like no one really tells us like, hey, or rather we don't have like very frank and open conversations about what it's like to kind of live with a mind in society and the realization that it can be different and that a lot of what we experience is very similar in terms of this type of self-referential thoughts about me and how you are doing this to me or I'm doing that to you. So anyways, that's the backdrop. Imagine what it would be like. It's kind of a leading question, but imagine what it would be like if you didn't need to spend that much time lost in thought. Imagine what it would be like if you went throughout your day with very few, if any, thoughts about yourself, or that thoughts altogether didn't feel bad, but was just like kind of a neutral sensation in the same way that, yeah, here's some birds outside or see a pretty blue sky and some green leaves on the trees. Like that's
flow state. So essentially what, the Jain and the Sikh and the Hindu ascetics would be like the state where one does not react, but one is.
90% agree with that. Yeah, and there are lots of ways to
apologize.
Absolutely.
I have to apologize. I have everything that you say. I have to, fortunately or unfortunately, take into reference with regards to spirituality. Not because this is like an aha moment where I'm trying to prove.
So let me double click on the one piece. What does react mean to you in that context?
Reaction can be twofold. Are you asking on a personal level or are you asking on a theoretical, what has your book reading told you level? I'm giving you options here.
Yeah. Let me actually state the comment behind the question, and then let's see how you play with it. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around reactivity, what it means to react, judgments around reacting. In spiritual circles.
True.
I think a lot of people interpret ideals around non-reactivity as non-action, non-movement, non-dynamism.
Non-dynamism, yes, correct.
Yeah.
But this is dualistic thinking. It's common. We don't need the guise of spirituality to participate in dualistic thinking. So answer your question, reaction is both essentially that, reacting to anything, everything. But also at the same time, reaction is also a nothingness. Say, I sit here in silence. I am reacting to that silence. There is no non-reaction in the sense of non-action. Everything is an action, including non-action. So, when you said earlier that we're not looking for a spiritual loophole, I understand if you were talking to like an average wannabe guru, no offense to people who are gurus or people who are preceptors or whatever, but it might not come off as though I am agnostic, because for all respects and purposes, I made a killing teaching people about which gods like this or that, which gods respond to this or that prayer, why people believe in gods. But when you said we're not taking a spiritual loophole, I really like that, because at the core of it all, if you strip all spirituality of its ritual, what it actually is just self-mastery. And I kind of feel like you're taking the language of spirituality and you're not really rewriting it, but you're taking away all the ritualistic mumbo jumbo out of it, and you're presenting it in a way that isn't 100% cold and clinical, but also isn't 100% impersonal. But at the same time, it also manages to still tap into that necessary drive for the human mind to grasp at something bigger than itself. So the No, please.
Yeah,
Please
so it would be great to live in a world where you didn't have to consider yourself spiritual or even spiritual curious in order to benefit from the perks that spirituality can afford people. Totally agree with that. And which is why, like, on the Guided Shifting website, there's nothing spiritual about it. I don't even think the word awakening is really on the website, or spirituality is even on the website. And that all being said, if you are spiritual, if you are mystical, if you are religious, like, great. And what I found is going through these distilled down experiences that you're kind of touching on, these concepts that were prototyped in various mystical and spiritual circles and communities over the years, you can gain the benefits of those at the embodied level, because again, there's no teaching or belief associated with anything that I put out there on the website. This is all just these embodied experiences that hopefully lead to lasting changes in how you live. And go be spiritual on the other side of that. What I find is you tend to gain even more direct and deep and intimate access to what a lot of these spiritual communities and practices we're trying to facilitate in the first place. So my aspiration here is that it's a booster. If it could be a spiritual booster if you're a spiritual person. And yeah, it might even enhance or augment your relationship with certain aspects of spirituality in a way that, again, that's more direct and intimate and authentic to you.
Yeah, well, when you said that there's a lot of reactivity when it comes to the spiritual community and reaction, that kind of.
I'm reacting to a dry mouth right now, by the way, and the
Go
desire
ahead.
to drink water.
How do you prevent a drop of water from ever drying up? You throw it into the ocean. I'm just full of this, 10,000 years of human collective. Some people would call it nonsense. Other people would call it wisdom. I just call it, stuff, poetry, I guess. But yeah, the reactivity to reaction. I think it extends even further into how, they react to the practices. And that's you made mention of how a lot of people, if they don't seek thrills through hedonism or through extreme sports or what have you, they try to escape through spirituality, and so spirituality becomes a form of escape. Now, forgive me if this is a very pointed question, but
make it pointier.
I'll sharpen the knife and stab you where it counts. Is your system likewise not a form of escape, and why isn't it?
Great question. Oh, I love that. So when I think of escape, let's spend a moment kind of holding this concept of escape. I think of it as like, I'm not okay here. I could be more okay somewhere else. I'm not okay here in the current set of circumstances, and I perhaps can only feel more okay in a different set of circumstances. Often that form of a relationship with escapism is more external circumstances oriented. I do not feel okay in the environment that I'm in, with the people I'm around, where I'm at in my career. I would only feel okay if I was experiencing different external circumstances around different people in a different physical place, making more money or having more prestige or whatever. So first, nothing wrong with that. Like,
it's a human thing. It's a
human thing. And yeah, like, we should escape danger. Great. We should escape starvation and
poverty,
thirst, like
sickness.
Poverty. Yes, like the body needs certain things in order to be healthy, and so yeah, if we are empowered to escape unhealthy systems, exactly, like especially social, like, yes, great. Now, what can happen now, so that's the light side of escape. There's a shadow side to it, and this is, I think, where both of our curiosities really are satisfied. Escapism on the shadow side can be a way of increasingly shrinking your world, so you only feel okay under a very narrow set of circumstances. Now, again, if that's all, that could still be an upgrade for people. An example might be you only feel okay around a certain guru or something, and you don't feel okay around your family members or your friends or other strangers. You only feel okay in that community. And if that gives you a huge boost, if you were not okay in the world and that gives you a boost, that could still be fantastic and what your system needs. What my program offers people is a way to feel a deep sense of safety, okayness, connectedness anywhere with anyone. So the entire world is one that you can freely move through and feel a sense of community and connection with. That is the goal. That is the goal. And that's something I've benefited from. I'm in no way the end state of that, but I've made a lot of progress. And oh my gosh, it's just so much better. It's so much better to, like, one of the main benefits that I spontaneously experience through these practices in my own life is just what it's like to be around strangers. Oh my gosh. It's like often the highlight of my day, this complete sense of abundant family and brotherhood and sisterhood, of just feeling so much access to joy and play and love and connection with complete strangers that move in and out of your life unexpectedly. It's just total delight, total abundance, riches you didn't even know you had. And so, yeah, my goal is to move people through the sessions on my website to graduate them from those sessions and then have them go live better lives. I don't want anyone getting stuck in these practices. Again, I don't even prescribe daily practices or things you have to do every day to get the benefits. Experience the sessions. Hopefully they lead to lasting, powerful results, and go live your life, however you want to design it. So yeah, everyone deserves to have options, but I don't want to lock anyone in a cushy little prison cell of
cocoon of route and ritual. I saw on I because I did an itty bitty bit of research, not that much, because I came in quite unexpectedly at that, but here I am and here you are and here we are. So one of the caveats that you, if you don't mind me calling it a caveat, that you put on your website is that individuals who experience severe forms of internalized trauma, or individuals who disassociate or who experience, for lack of a better term, schizophrenia or breaks from reality, if you will, that your program and or your sessions are not advised for these individuals. And from what you've told me, I can understand why. Within the context of religious practice, religion it's kind of like a double-edged sword in that it fosters the sense of belongingness, if you will. But at the same time, it creates this demarcation of otherness, wherein there is the them and there is the you. So there's your people, and there's those people. And so, I mean, there have been various religious movements throughout history where they have attempted to blur the lines between the them and the us. The Bhakti movement in India, for example, which rose into prominence sometime in the 1700s up until the early. Bhakti is devotion in Sanskrit. They were like, no caste, no race, no creed, no gender, no nothing. Everything is one. So it's refreshing to see the same kind of concept that's existed, give or take, 300, 400 years ago, and it's packaged, if you will. I hope you don't mind using that term. It's packaged in a very Tarian approach. So,
yep.
I'm genuinely curious. Have you not, in any way whatsoever, in the past, whether it's 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, ever had what people would categorize as a profound religious experience? And
No.
if you did, no. Okay. All right. So your entire system is absolutely divorced 100% from any quasi-religious anything.
Yep. And another way to add a little more meat on that is some people, I don't know the exact percentage, I haven't calculated it, but some people report having like mystical experiences during the sessions that I guide them through. And I never did. You don't need to have those experiences for it to work on you.
So the mystical experiences is not the goal. It's just, it comes with the package for some people.
Right. And I don't know why. It's probably just the way their system's designed and just what spontaneously happens. But yes, what I'm offering, like, I'm sure there's some people that do seek it out in order to experience these peak mystical states, but that's not the way that I package it. What ends up happening is spontaneously your lived experience. If you were to describe your lived experience, if I were to describe my lived experience to you right now in certain ways, it would sound like a peak mystical state, but it feels extraordinarily ordinary and not even noteworthy. And it's just like, just go along with my day.
It's very surprising when you say, like, it sounds like a mystical experience, but it's just ordinary. I mean, The Buddhist monk Takuan Soho once wrote, I could be wrong on the dates, give or take the 1600s. He says, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After
Yeah.
enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. We've
It's so funny.
created
Yeah.
this entire, I don't know, we've created this entire red herring, about this concept of enlightenment. That the moment that you reach enlightenment, you're this bloody Jedi. You're like Yoda. And it's absolute bunk. It's nonsense. I know that there will be some people who will hear this and be offended, but take it from, I mean, I'm not, I'm not addressing you per se, but the general audience who will, see this eventually, I hope. I've been through Hinduism, I've been through Catholicism, I've been through Islam, I've been through Satanism, I've been through all of that. And I'm not gonna say that none of it is real. I'm also not gonna say that all of it is real. But what I am gonna say is we tend to build it up over much, that we've lost what it's supposed to be. Which is, it's very, very refreshing personally to hear all of this from an individual, who has absolutely no religious background or exposure or whatever, packaged in a way that if, let's say, you and I and Jake, were to sit in a room with some Zen masters from the 1400s or from the 1600s, they'd be like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's the same S word I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
It's lovely. I mean, and again, I don't think this is anyone's fault. I don't. I'm sure there's like probably been over the course of history like toxic power dynamics and forms of manipulation and spiritual, bypassing and blind spots, of course.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, the changes at the embodied level that occur through these practices. My website offers this particular pathway, and there, of course, you could access these states through other methods. It's not like I patented the only way to get access to them. It just so happens that what I offer is a distilled version where in a very short amount of time you can go through the experience. It's just like it's super easy now because of the breakthroughs and the research around all this. But yeah, the language that describes the lived experience makes it sound, even unintentionally, like it's on a pedestal. So take non-duality, for example. Non-dual perception and just experiencing life non-dually is one of the things that typically happens, even just after like a first session or two on the website, where people gain access to this. And for years, I was under the belief that in order to experience non-duality and to awaken, I had to be a great student of all the great teachers. So I read so many books and watched so many lectures and learned so much information. Doesn't help. If anything, it could actually set you back because it makes concrete expectations.
It's true.
But with non-duality, I always assumed that it was a merging into the cosmic soup, that I would literally feel like I'm the size of the entire universe. I would be cosmically big and I would be omniscient. I don't know, just literally like
You'd be a Jedi.
And some. Because I would be the field of midichlorians or whatever that powers the Jedis. Like I would just be the whatever. And yeah, I would totally be the Force. Like, exactly.
We've all been there. I share your sentiments, because I too, once upon a time, was like, if I, what was the, I think, again, like you, I've read, you probably read different books than the books that I've read, but there is this commonality of experience here that we're
similar relationship with them.
Yes, exactly. So, there was this one book, I think that was a Jain book or a Sikh book, where you have to traverse the world and stand before the feet of every guru before you understand the truth of the truth or something of the sort. And like you, there's
that method probably worked for a lot of people.
10,000 years ago or 5,000.
Yeah.
Probably because, that's how their brains were wired back in the day. But how our brains are wired today with the internet and with social media and with everything else in between. Essentially, now we have the knowledge of ages at our very fingertips, and we have absolutely no idea what the hell to do with it.
And I think too, so what I first was brought into this field, what attracted me to it was it just seemed like the ultimate hero's journey. I'm going to go on a cool quest and I'm going to achieve something that no one else I know has achieved. I'm going to just silly, but it's true. And I'm sure a lot of people think that way.
Everyone wants that. That's why it's a formative, Campbell said...
go ahead.
Campbell said, that everyone has a hero's journey. You, me, everybody. We've all
Totally.
wanted that.
Oh yeah, and hey, like hero's journey is it does seem to be kind of connected to our wiring and like fantastic in all other parts of life, but we are now living in a world where the process of awakening no longer requires the hero's journey. It literally it is so freaking simple now. Enlightenment, and I can kind of compare the definitions here. Enlightenment is kind of further toward the horizon. I like that has some more product development in that area. But yeah, in terms of like entering into the awakening progression, where you're starting to experience non-dual perception, the reduction or elimination of self-referential thought, this movement through intuition, this sense of interconnectedness, and maybe even some other phenomena like the sense of distance being reduced or colors being enhanced, some of these other embodied changes that can happen. Literally hour and a half or 2 hours through these sessions on the website, and it gets normal for people to automatically get that. So what does it mean for spirituality or awakening broadly speaking if it is a post-hero's journey kind of world we're living in, where it's just easy? It turns out it doesn't have to be an entire hero's journey to get there. And so what drives me is, cool, like, if millions or tens of millions of people around the world efficiently rewire their systems in this way and get to live from this place, then what? What's the possibility? What could we do with that? What else is possible? There's another hero's journey on the other side of that that's even cooler. And so that's what gets me pumped.
No, but
maybe you're done, and maybe you're done. You get to live life just totally with nothing that you have to do, but you just get to live an enjoyable life. Like, also awesome.
Or maybe that's the new hero's journey.
Yeah, to feel perfectly okay with not needing to be a hero.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's go back to, the system that you have. Would you mind, once again, for the sake of the layman here, how would an absolute beginner go through this system that you've developed? Could you describe how this works for a beginner? Let's make it a clean slate. This beginner is absolutely non-religious, has never had any sort of religious experiences.
Yep.
Is
no meditation experience.
No meditation experiences, no nothing. They're moderately curious about things, but they're not obsessive about anything. They're moderately intelligent, but they're not
also not required.
Yeah, there's that. They're moderately traumatized. They've had some traumatic experiences,
of course,
but they're not effed up in a very profound way. How would such an individual go through your system?
It's super straightforward. The very first thing that you do, once you go onto the website, you choose whatever amount you could afford to pay, and then you get access to the whole thing. And I keep sending over updates and things over time too, so you'll get all that. Okay, so at the very beginning, you start with this session that's called a baseline discovery session. So before we make any changes, before we go through any transformative experiences, let's just get a clear sense of where you're at right now. So it's actually a pretty meaty session. And again, in order to avoid bypassing or blind spots, I walk people through reflection exercises to reflect on so many different aspects of their lives, just to capture ground truth. Where are you at today? And we'll be able to measure changes against that ground truth going forward. So you get a snapshot in the beginning of where you're at. So that's the very, very first step. And then you enter into your first guided shifting session. So the guided shifting sessions in total are around an hour to an hour and a half. So you want to budget out that time to do them in a quiet, comfortable space. You can be in a comfy chair. You can be reclined. I don't recommend doing them totally flat, but you can be reclined. I did my sessions in this chair, reclining back. You don't need to be in a fancy full lotus pose or anything. You want to be comfortable. You can have a blanket on your lap. You can have a pillow or two. All good. And then I have you close your eyes, and then you follow along this video of me on your screen where I guide you through this process of basically I help you relax, and then I help you pay attention to certain things, and just these very subtle movements of attention and noticing of certain things that spontaneously occur and having you work with them in a specific way. After about 30 minutes, you open your eyes, and it's normal, like for around 75, 80+% of people with the way it's currently designed. You open your eyes and you just kind of feel a little different. And then we go for another round to give you another dose, because they keep building. It's like the dosing over time keeps compounding and building. So in the first session, you do 2 rounds of, I call it shifting. So each round is about 30 minutes, and it's the same method, and it just increases the dose. Then you open your eyes at the end and you feel a different kind of different. And maybe the first time you open your eyes, you feel kind of airy. and light and spacious. And then the second time you open your eyes at the end of the session, you might feel really like heavy or grounded or buzzy. You just kind of feel a little different. It's normal too for people to open their eyes and they just won't want to do anything. It's the most relaxed they've ever felt. It feels like, often for the first time in their lives, it feels like there's nothing they need to do. Because the anxiety, the compulsion to just keep seeking out the next thing, it's just, you feel so safe in your body. And people will often just want to spend another 10, 15, 20 minutes just sitting and relaxing and soaking it in. So whenever you're ready to proceed to the final part of the session, I walk you through a series of reflection questions that you investigate in real time to investigate what may have shifted in your current experience. So some questions include like, how's mental activity right now? And people will normally say like, oh my gosh, like completely quiet. Or if there are thoughts, they feel like lighter or more ephemeral, less sticky. Sometimes people say zero thoughts. And I've asked in person, like, can you even think of a thought right now? And they'll say, what's the point? And then I'll ask like, well, how are you even responding to these questions? And they'll say, I don't know, the responses are just kind of happening. I'm not like preloading them. It's just totally intuitive, unfiltered, like trusting of what's unfolding. So I walk you through a couple of these reflection questions. We basically run little experiments and there's no right or wrong answer. You just see what it's like, what mental activity is like, what your emotional activity is like, what your body is like, how objects in the visual field showing up. Basically explore these different dimensions of your lived experience. And then the session concludes. And then I advise you to just be really gentle with yourself through the rest of the day. It's normal for people to feel kind of high for like a little while or a couple hours, and then system integrates it and you kind of feel normal again. Then in the coming days, you just observe what's changed. Sometimes there will be very few changes. Sometimes there will be pretty big changes, specifically around what we can traditionally define as non-reactivity, where you're in situations or you're around certain people where you're used to feeling triggered, where suddenly you feel okay. That spike of adrenaline or cortisol or contraction, like in the chest or in the gut or the throat, is just not there automatically. Similarly, another change that can happen is there's more emotion that gets expressed in certain moments because there's less resistance of those emotions. The body feels safer and therefore no longer needs to hold back certain emotions, bottle it in, which is super unhealthy and could lead to chronic illness. The body feels free to just let more emotion flow. So those are the types of changes that can spontaneously happen. And so that's just all from one session, hour to an hour and a half. And then if you like where you're at, you could stay there. You don't have to do any more sessions. You can keep doing more sessions if you want to experience more of the changes along the way. We can talk about that more in a bit if you're curious. And also if you don't like the way your life is, if you don't like the changes, it's super rare, but it can happen. There's also guidance on the website to reverse shift, to basically undo. Command Z to change it. Yeah.
To undo the Jedi mind trick, if you will.
Exactly. So to complete the rest of your question, so that's one unit of a guided shifting session. Over the entire course of the offering, there are about 15 or so sessions that you are guided through, and different things show up along the journey. Different neurophysiological changes show up along the way associated with the awakening progression. So that's the foundation of the experience on the website. Every time you do another one of those sessions, you're basically upgrading how safe your body feels. There's another way to think of it. And then it's still normal for you to experience moments of anxiety or moments of suffering or mental loops or things like that. Even after some guided shifting sessions, some deeply rooted trauma or defense patterns can still be there. And so there's another category of sessions on the website called sound bubbling sessions that are designed to leverage how uniquely safe your body feels to fully allow for the expression and healing of these deeply rooted kind of trauma and defense patterns. So that's more of the healing side of the equation. Those are available to you if you want them as well. So that's just, there are more sessions on the website too, but that's the overview.
Thank you. That's very detailed. But I have two follow-up questions. Actually, there's a list of questions that
I was going to say only two. Dang, yeah.
I have two follow-up questions that ride in on two of the things that you've stated with how guided meditation works. So you said earlier that sometimes the sessions allow for this less guarded, less bottled up sort of sensation or feeling, this release, if you will. Yeah. So I ask this as someone who has dealt with angsty teenagers for a better part of my adult life. How does this experience translate to, shall we say, emotional outbursts or bouts of, if this is a loaded question, pardon me, how does this translate to emotional outbursts or bouts of applied externalized either violence and or self-harm or the harming of others, because there is a reason psychologically why people bottle things up or why we control our emotions. And if we let the floodgates through, we do that when we are high, we do that when we're drunk, we do that when we're in states of severe distress, as I'm sure you know. Do the sessions sometimes inadvertently result in such a reaction, or do they not?
This is a great question. By the way, I'm hearing a little static. Now, are you hearing that too?
Yeah, I'm also hearing that.
That's probably on my end.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're good.
Probably on mine. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. So let's spend some time in this territory
Yes,
of this
yes,
question. There's a
yes.
lot here. I'm glad you brought it up, so thank you. So how to enter into this. Okay, so when you say emotional outbursts, there are a couple different things you could mean by that. One is you're kind of chill and then you're chill again. Like, so there's that. Another thing you might be describing is expressing an emotion in a way that's designed to dominate or injure or attack another person or another being.
Or simply react in a way, because sometimes, and most cases, especially in the spiritual world, there is a lot of emphasis on non-anger, you know?
Exactly.
Like, do not be angry, do not be... But when you dredge up feelings, especially if they're repressed, it is a perfectly human thing to do, to be angry. So how does the system, your system, handle that?
So there's more for me to develop around this. I think that there's more room to add in some of the things I'm about to mention on the website over time. Anger specifically, great example. I didn't experience pure anger until I was about 31. It was that repressed. It was that big of a no-go zone where my system was absolutely terrified. At some level, it thought, if I ever experience this, I will die. So, and yet, if you look in the animal kingdom, you look all around nature, anger can be a beautifully adaptive and wonderful thing. Anger, when cleanly experienced and expressed, is a boundary defense. It says, back off. Every being has a right to their own space and a right to self-protection. You see it all throughout nature. Humanity is no different. And so I don't issue any taboos in any directions around any emotions. It turns out the human body is designed to feel and express a whole spectrum of emotion. So I'll jump ahead a bit, and then again, we can keep going a little deeper in various parts of this sandbox. This is really juicy. So the desired end state here. What's the end state? If you reach the end, in my perspective, the desired end state is one where the default is you live in a state of peace, of loving connection, rest and digest in kind of polyvagal terms, where your body is just very safe and settled. And whenever there's an emotion that the body wants to feel and express and allow to move through, ideally it's felt promptly, so it's not being suppressed for that long. It's felt cleanly, so often anger is a mask for hurt.
True, yeah.
I'm going to hurt you, hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you more. So it's felt cleanly. It's the actual emotion. And that's really at the root, and it's expressed skillfully. A great book as an example that deals with the skillful expression or verbalization of emotion is nonviolent communication. And there are lots of resources on this too. So yes, ideally, whenever emotion wants to arise, it's expressed, it's felt and expressed promptly, cleanly, and skillfully. So that is the desired end state. And yeah, if I find myself, say, in a couple of years in a very different reality where I'm in the middle of a war zone, probably not going to be like super duper calm instead, or like the peace is not going to be in the apparent foreground of my presentation. I'm going to have to require a much more dynamic experience of what this body can feel and do. So it's very environment dependent. However, our bodies think, because of trauma, because of these learned defense patterns, our bodies think that they are still in those threatening moments that were too much to feel back then. Could be recently or even going back to childhood. And so the other way of describing the desired end state is one where you are fully embodied in this present reality. You're fully embodied in this present reality. So if you reject me or criticize me, I'm not protecting wounded inner child Jason that had some attachment wounding as a kid, because then you get a disproportionate emotional reaction that's not tethered to the reality of the present moment, which can seem like an emotional outburst. The flip side to all of this is emotional outburst is all measured in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah,
what might seem to you like an emotional outburst might actually be a very clean and full and beautiful expression of laughter or anger or something on my end. But we each have our own operating system around this. So in accordance to your operating system, what you just witnessed me do is something your system is not supposed to allow.
Accept. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is you led me to the second part of the question, which is you keep on going back to the element of I'm going to coin a term for this because I suppose you have your own term for this. Ever mindfulness it's something that sounds ridiculously Buddhist, the constant state of ever mindfulness, if you will.
By the way, ridiculously Buddhist has to be the name of your next book. I think it's a great title.
Thank you. I'll think about that. I actually had, aspirations of writing a book on the ridiculousness of Buddhism called Buddhist Bullshit, but, that's neither here nor there. But, it's so ridiculously Buddhist, but I think it encompasses, what you're kind of going off of here, which leads me to the question that you yourself, brought up. So in regular human psychological programming, humans are designed to react. Humans are not designed to not react, which is... it's contrary to animal nature. Animal nature is designed to respond to stimuli, to their environment.
If A, then B, yeah.
Yes. So for individuals who engage in your systems, and once again, another loaded question, so I beg your pardon beforehand. For individuals who engage in your system, but who deal in jobs or professions, if you will, that require them to react, sometimes immediately, sometimes violently, in order to accomplish something, will partaking in the system somehow invariably result in either apathy or
Great question.
Delayed reaction? Or would they be like a rabbit?
Yeah. No, by the end, we're all like...
Yeah, true.
So,
true.
Super limp. You're just a puddle on the ground. So here's what I've observed with this. This gets actually to a deeper definition of reactivity. I'm glad we're circling back to. I think what you're describing is fear-based reactivity rather than like intuitive responsiveness. So throughout my day, there's lots of movement that happens. And it's to get even more technical, it's like it feels like movement amidst stillness. It's paradoxical. Mm-hmm. But like once you reach like toward the end of the guided shifting journey, your embodied experience gets a little more paradoxical in those ways, where it feels like you're just totally awash in this sense of complete and utter stillness. And within that, motion is happening, movement is happening, dynamic things are happening. You'll find out when you get there. But when I go through my day and have lots of movement, a lot of A that happens, then I respond in accordance with B or C or D. What I discovered in myself, and I think this is common for people, is you could start to feel the difference between responding intuitively and responding from a place of fear and self-protection. So you can feel the kind of ick. To me, it has like an ick quality of when I am reacting or moving through the world from this place, like anxious deficit or fear, ultimately. And it just feels different. It has a different quality to it. Than responding from a place of pure intuition, where I like to be. Turns out it's great. So I'm glad I got to lay out that distinction between like fear-based reactivity. I'm not okay unless I do this versus
react in a certain way.
Yeah. So your question is about like if you're in a job where a lot of that kind of reactivity is asked of you or is required.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first, again, I'll remind listeners, if you end up doing the guided shifting program and you don't like the changes to your lived experience, do the reverse shifting sessions, and then you can come back to them later. But yeah, it turns out for a lot of people, a lot of their movement, a lot of their behavior throughout their day is ultimately rooted in fear. Another example could be if you're in a relationship that's actually pretty toxic, there might be a fear of being alone that's keeping you in a toxic relationship, just as one example. Same with the job. So if, let's say like, prior to your first guided shifting session, if 90% of your movements through life are fear-based or motivated by fear, and then suddenly the amount of fear that you experience is like brought down to zero, then yeah, that's going to be a pretty big change. People can experience that as a lack in motivation, where it's just like, no, like I'm not gonna do that. What tactically, what this could look like is often bosses and managers will pass their own anxiety down into their direct reports as a way of making the boss or manager feel better about some kind of ego-based, individual-based like anxieties. And yeah, if you're one of those direct reports, you might notice that like the thing that's being asked of you is actually not important to the overall mission of the organization. And they're better uses of your time. Or maybe the mission itself could be better. It allows you to be much more attuned to what's actually important, what you're actually using your creative energy in service of. And so, yeah, you might actually, for the first time in your life, be able to stand up to your boss. And maybe your boss will love that. Maybe your boss will hate that. There are bosses that love that kind of thing. There are bosses that hate that kind of thing. I can't give a one-size-fits-all prescription. But I think generally you get access to more choice. But it also does feel, you could feel the ick and even a decrease in energy of going through the old motions of acting on behalf of fear as you may have done for a lot of your life. So that if you're, for me, before I entered into this process, I was an executive coach. I lived my life in service of other people's growth and well-being. And there was a lot of good stuff in my life. Fantastic relationship with my wife, great setup. And so it wasn't really an abrupt change. My life was like welcoming all of these changes within me. Like my life was already pretty well designed for these changes. And it's possible that for some people, they might not be as well designed. So yeah, there might be some changes, but hopefully these are good changes that would be spawned within you to realize you deserve better, that you have dignity and you matter, your needs matter, and what you feel called to matters. And you don't need to react to everyone's fear around you impulsively anymore. You get to be more at choice. And sometimes that means
it's like this empowering,
Yes.
element to it. Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. I have more nagging questions, but for the sake of, once again, going back to the layman, for the beginner who was interested in guided, your system of guided meditation, your guided shift, if you will.
Yep.
What are the prerequisites?
Zero.
Zero.
You're psychologically stable. So you mentioned this earlier. If you're prone to act, if you're frequently prone to dissociation, or if you are not living in kind of a consensus reality, again, if you are struggling with symptoms of some more intense psychological challenges, get stabilized, get the treatments you need to feel like a baseline level of functionality in the world before pursuing any of this. I also probably wouldn't recommend people under like 15 or maybe even under 18 do this. I don't have enough data yet on that. But yeah, you don't need any meditation experience. You don't need any spiritual experience for this. Like, again, it often works best for people who come in totally fresh. Yeah, those are the prerequisites. Very simple.
With respect to, because you've told us at the beginning of the podcast that you had a lot of individuals from, say, Europe, like Sweden or
all around
Germany, thereabouts. Yeah, there are. I would from the short time that I've talked with you, I get this feeling, that you share some sentiments as I do about the equitability of the world or the lack thereof, and that the world needs more equitableness all throughout. So what does your program sound like? Again, another loaded question. What does your program sound like, or how is it like for individuals who, say, live in a third world country, if you will, or in a war-torn country, but they're interested in trying to make head or tail of their current state of being? Because there are monetary elements to the program. So what does it sound like for individuals who don't have that?
Ultimately, they will have to be the ones who respond to that question, because I'm not them. On the affordability piece, at the moment that we're recording this, the most affordable version of the tier that you can pay for this is $50. And I went through a lot of pricing experimentation earlier this year, originally starting off with like $500 price points, keeping in mind too that as an executive coach, my like average hourly rate over the last couple of years has been $1,500 an hour. And that's just like not affordable to most people. And so, yeah, you get an extraordinary amount of content and sessions and experiences for as little as $50. And so my hunch is that if this really matters to people, they can find their way to $50.
They're going to find a way.
And again, the pricing might change. The packaging of this might change over the course of time on the website. So this is just true right now. But yeah, I want to live in a world where this is like very accessible to everyone. And I also discovered over time, if you pay a little bit of money, you're going to be more likely to actually like value the experience and go through it. And so, yeah, there's definitely a sweet spot there. That's the affordability piece. In terms of like other aspects of lived experience, it's hard for me to say. I can't offer a one size fits all prescription here. Can you, one other personal anecdote is you might be in a situation, be it in the war-torn country, where I imagine your body needs access to both its fight response and its flight response. You need ready access to both. I think that our bodies tend to prefer one over the other.
Well, yeah.
I
guess it falls under the same, if someone who is not mentally stable should ideally not take I guess someone who is in a perpetual state of combat, like I have to be. Yeah.
So I don't know. So for me, like never had access to my fight response over the course of my life. And suddenly over this last year, my body has felt safe enough for me to start to gain access to it. So in January, I started taking boxing classes. I love it. It's awesome. And it brings more capacities online, more options online for how I get to move through the world. And I think everyone deserves that. And so, yeah, there's nothing wrong with a fight or flight response. What becomes an issue is if your nervous system is stuck in a fight or flight response, particularly if your environmental circumstances are not ones where you're actually being physically threatened a lot. But if you're in a state of persistent fight or flight every time you're around your work colleagues or something, it's probably going to lead to worse decision making, and you'll be more tired, and it's just going to be more challenging. And so again, the goal here is to move your baseline to the rest and digest kind of state of the nervous system with clean, prompt, skillful access to fight or flight or other emotions when needed, but not as the default. I think there are few humans, probably with every generation, fewer and fewer humans over the last couple hundred years actually would be better suited by living in a default like rest and digest state. And hopefully that trajectory continues to be true. But again, I want all capacities to be online. This isn't about turning off your fight or turning off your flight. Both could be very, very supportive for you and your family if needed.
It's a very balanced take. So there's this repetitive term here, the neurology, rewiring neurology, or somehow there's, I think that the term that Jake said before the podcast started was the combining of neuroscience with somatic, what's that term? My goodness, pardon me.
Somatic therapy, somatic experience.
Yeah, I am a sciencey person, but not that sciencey. So how does this come into play? Say, for example, if I were an individual who am on some sort of medication, let's say I am chronically depressed, I'm on antidepressants, I'm on anti-anxiety medication, and I'm seeing another therapist on the side, but I'm not cheating on you. It's polyamorous. It's all good.
Oh yeah, please cheat on me. Like, get whatever. If you can get support, get more support. I still work with a coach and do retreats and things. Like I cheat on this stuff all the time.
So how does is this perfectly compatible, with individuals who are like on antidepressants or anti-anxiety or what have you?
So I would love to get more data on this question. What I have, so there's this community, it's called POK, or Perfectly Okay. It's a nonprofit community of people who have participated in the courses by Dr. Jeffrey Martin, whose research lays the foundation again for how the kind of different stages of awakening progress. There are a couple of thousand people in this community, and some of the prominent members are therapists and psychologists, and I have a lot of respect for these people. And I've spoken with some of them, and this community has been around for many, many years, maybe around a decade, I think, but it could be a little wrong.
It's a long time, yeah.
I think it's perfectlyok.org is the actual website. It'd probably say how long they've been around there. I believe the impression in that community is that as long as you are psychologically stable, aren't any
drawbacks,
specific concerns or that I know of. I think that I think that's as much as I can say about that right now. I think I've had a good handful of people who are on antidepressants and other forms of medication experience guided shifting sessions. I've not had any of them report any issues to me thus far. And by this point, by the time we're recording this, I've had around 300 people experience it. So I haven't received any reports yet, but I don't want to make any sweeping claims.
I've held
Love
the
to do more
fort
research on
for
this
long
later.
enough, and Jake's back. So Jake, if you will.
Sure, yeah. I'm in, where I am in San Diego just had like a little earthquake too, so I had to leave the
Oh my
house,
gosh.
come back in.
You okay?
So I appreciate you guys staying on and keeping it rolling.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
I'm
Jeez.
Are you
back.
okay?
You're in the Bay Area, Jason, or
I'm in
Glenn?
Sacramento, California.
Sacramento. Okay, okay. So hopefully you're not getting
We get
that.
the occasional little wiggle. It's
Yeah.
like, did I just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one thing I also wanted to go into too is with your executive coaching. I'm wondering what the transformation has been like for folks who already have very high leverage lifestyles, who are movers and shakers. What are some changes you've noticed when they're able to drop into their safety more instead
Yeah.
of being fight or flight or putting out fires at work? Like, what kind of skills do they gain, and where have you
Totally.
seen them grow?
Yeah. So, addition is subtraction in this. So, or I should say, subtraction is addition. One of the leading modalities in the executive coaching world comes from some researchers out of Harvard. It's called immunity to change. The idea goes as follows: we have, as leaders, or also as non-leaders, like we have something that we want to improve on, some skill we want to develop, some attribute we want to improve, that we want to get better at, but we just can't quite seem to make progress on it. For certain leaders, it might be delegation or public speaking or something like that. It's like you want to keep pushing your foot on the gas, but you just can't seem to make progress with it. And it's because you have some immunity to change. You have another foot on the brake. So the harder you push on the gas, you're simultaneously pushing hard on the brake without you realizing it, causes you to go nowhere, and it causes a lot of energy to be expended through the system. So the approach, and this actually draws from various therapeutic modalities too, is if you could just ease your foot off the gas, you're naturally going to go much faster and much further. So subtraction equals addition in that way. So what commonly happens for leaders when they undergo these changes through guided shifting and sound bubbling, the kind of corresponding trauma healing sessions on the website, they feel so much safer in their bodies. There's just this simplification effect that happens. There's not nearly as much to think about. You're much more attuned to what's actually important. Distractions are far less potent. And the more successful you are as a leader, the more people you're leading, the more resources you're managing, the more complexity you are holding, the greater the capacity for distractions. And so first and foremost, there's this massive simplification that happens. It makes it much easier to focus on what actually matters, because maybe for the months or years prior, you've been avoiding what's most important because it triggers some old anxiety in the body and you're trying to manage around it. So yeah, I've seen major improvements in sleep amongst leaders. I've seen just one of the biggest issues that leaders face is not trusting their intuition enough and early enough, especially around personnel. It's just not the right person for this role. We deserve to have someone who's a better fit. And there's this kind of saying that like no one ever regrets firing someone too early. They always regret firing someone way too late. And so you're just much more likely to you feel the rise of some intuition coming up, you act upon it and you're done and it's complete and you move on instead of like, should I, shouldn't I? You can waste days, weeks, months, like being stuck with that inner turmoil. So it's just much cleaner. There's a much greater capacity to just be able to hold more complexity. My life right now is a perfect example of that. So I'm doing all the stuff on the guided shifting website, like myself right now. And I'm like twirling so many like plates basically. And it feels totally fine. Like I'm nowhere near capacity right now. And it's a part of just the impact that these practices have had on my lived experience too. Any other things for that question? I mean, there are other like softer sides of this too. Like some leaders, for whatever reason, the way they're designed, their systems are built, even just offering like loving appreciation and admiration of their employees and their company or their products or services was like offline the whole way. And then your system goes through these changes and you get to reintegrate that. So, but yeah, the bottom line is there's this consistent boost in courage that I see. A willingness to just trust your instincts in a way that's generous, even if it upsets your investors or it upsets your co-founders or your executive team or your employees. And what's great is you're no longer dumping your anxiety on everyone else. Hey team, make me feel better by doing X, Y, Z. It's like, no, actually I feel fine. I'm fine if this company fails. Not all companies are going to succeed and live forever. Come on. Like this is like nature. Things come in and out of existence, and companies are like that too, let's be honest. So there's much more of a simplified, courageous like stance for the truth that comes through. And I think all leaders deserve it. And I hope that this work has the potential to totally transform the leadership development world as a result of all these changes I've been seeing since I've been using this method with clients starting a year ago.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I absolutely will make a lot of changes in leadership and executive
I hope so.
development. Yeah, and also made me think too about like for folks who are, you know, like working like in middle management or more entry level employees who may want to climb the ladder or take on more responsibilities.
Or suddenly, maybe for the first time in their life, they feel okay without climbing.
Yeah, even better. Yeah.
Without knowing, just think about all the time that people spend having to chart out their path toward the next rung on the ladder or something. I'm not okay here. I will only be okay there. It's basically the way that their system's built. The way
And
their
when they
system,
get
their
there,
mind.
they're still not okay there.
Turns out that's what you just. If you're lucky enough to get there, you might discover. Well, apparently that wasn't high enough. I got to reach higher, and da 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 da. But hey, getting to that higher level might be really fun. You might still want to do it, even though you're perfectly okay where you are.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Jason, is there any like, are there any things like that have come to mind that you haven't had a chance to share so far on the podcast? Like any thoughts, emotions, feelings?
No, but I'm going to pause and let's see if anything does come. Okay. It's springtime right now in Sacramento. And one of the great unexpected benefits that all this work has had on my life is this deep enjoyment of the seasons and nature and plants and the smells outside. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like it's amazing. I get such deep joy. This is totally common for people as they go through even just one or two of these sessions. Like, just the amount of deep, fulfilling joy that you could feel just like looking at a flower that's in bloom and the trees with their leaves that are finally sprouting and just the smell in the air and just seeing other people outside enjoying it. There's just so much life to be enjoyed. And it just turns out that your mind and your nervous system go through this little rewiring process spontaneously. You are seated at the buffet of like so much life to enjoy, instead of trying to just seek out little bits of it throughout your day. And I wish that for so many people. And for me, it's just a better way to live. And it might not be for everyone, and everyone will have their own version of the experience I've described. But boy, it's so nice to experience spring right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, and something about what you said felt very refreshing, and also made me think about how, like, in this process or going through all these shifting sessions, how much I can show up and be more available to my spouse, friends, family, and how enriching that would be. Much like you said earlier about being able to enjoy strangers in a deep way because you feel such a deep sense of safety. Yeah, that sounds fantastic, and I'm looking forward to continuing to practice and also seeing the beautiful results you're getting for members.
Yeah, keep me posted. I'm thrilled. I'm especially thrilled about the potential for improved relationship dynamics with all this work too. It's like for the first time in my life, I can just fully experience my wife, whatever she's experiencing, and not get launched, as Alex and I were discussing earlier, not get propelled into reactivity loops to make me feel more okay. I could just fully be with my beloved partner, and it's just the greatest gift that we get to now offer that to both one another, and like to feel that unconditional love and to not have to contort your partner into a specific version of themselves for you to feel okay is just, it's so good. So yeah, Jake, I'm super curious to hear how the rest of your journey unfolds and what you discover.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Jason. Is there any other last pressing comments, questions, thoughts to leave with? Alex, Jason?
Nope. Alex, where are you at?
We're all good. Actually, I'm genuinely curious. Partly from like a scholastic modality, because there's so much about, you know, the system that you've created and how it's
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a curious animal. I will poke a dead rabbit with a stick to see if it moves. But you know, thank you for your time. Thank you for putting up with all of my annoying little questions. And thank you.
Dude,
for
not
being,
annoying. Never nagging. Never loaded. It was great. Really enjoyed our conversation.
I've had like we've had oodles of fun with this conversation. It's been 2 hours, 2 hours and 30 minutes. Imagine that. So thank you for dropping by and for being our guest. Hopefully for more podcasts to come, maybe in the near future. Jake.
Thank you so much for your time, and we'll speak soon.